Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something absolutely massive, both in its physical scale and, honestly, its global consequences. We're talking about the anatomy of America's nuclear defense system. Over the last 7 decades, the U.S. has built this incredibly complex, highly integrated machine. It's a vast, globe-spanning network of underground silos, stealthy submarines, high-flying bombers, and space-based satellites, and they are all working together every single second of every single day.
So let's dive right into the core paradox of deterrence. Think about this for a second. What does it actually take to build a weapon system so overwhelmingly powerful that its primary purpose is literally never to be used? I mean, the United States has spent billions upon billions of dollars and employed hundreds of thousands of highly trained people to build this unimaginably destructive machine, all with the ultimate goal of never actually turning the key. It's a defense system that is designed not to fight a war, but to completely prevent one from ever starting in the first place.
Section 1. The Paradox of Deterrence. From the Manhattan Project to the Cold War. To truly wrap our heads around how this massive shield operates today, we have to look back at how incredibly fast the original threat escalated.
Humanity basically went from theoretical physics on a chalkboard to a terrifying global arms race in the blink of an eye. Back in 1939, Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard warned President Franklin D. Roosevelt about the sheer potential of nuclear weapons, which kicked off the super-secret Manhattan Project. Fast forward to July 1945, the Trinity test proved the tech actually worked, and just like that, humanity had officially entered the nuclear age. Now, at first, the US had a total monopoly on this. But just 4 years later, in 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its own atomic bomb. The Cold War arms race was officially on, and those stakes just kept escalating until they reached a terrifying boiling point in 1962.
13, that is how many agonizing days that boiling point lasted. In October 1962, American reconnaissance discovered Soviet nuclear missiles were actually being installed in Cuba. To put that into perspective, that is just 90 miles from the U.S. mainland, literally right next door. For 13 days, these two nuclear superpowers stared each other down, bringing the entire world to the absolute brink of destruction. Ultimately, diplomacy prevailed, thank goodness, but the crisis fundamentally changed military thinking forever. It proved that simple misunderstandings could escalate into Armageddon in a flash, and it really underscored the absolute necessity for permanent, fail-safe, and highly communicative defense systems.
So, the crucial point to take away from all this is a concept known as second strike capability. Military planners realized that if they wanted to prevent a surprise attack, they had to guarantee that they could survive one and still strike back. The logic here is simple but incredibly powerful. If initiating a first strike guarantees a devastating counterattack, well, no rational leader would ever press the button. This foundational philosophy completely transformed nuclear weapons. They went from being tactical battlefield tools to instruments of pure prevention, which required building a system that was virtually indestructible.
Which brings us to Section 2, the muscle, America's Nuclear Triad. Let's look at the actual physical architecture of this deterrence and how spreading out the weapons creates impossible odds for any adversary.
The triad is essentially a three-legged stool of deterrence, relying on three distinct delivery methods. First up, you have intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. These offer rapid response, launching from hardened underground silos in a matter of minutes. Second, you have ballistic missile submarines, or SSBNs. These provide ultimate survivability because they're hiding deep beneath the ocean's surface. Finally, we have strategic bombers, which offer operational flexibility. They can be deployed to the skies as a highly visible warning, and crucially, they can actually be recalled if tensions happen to cool down.
Put them all together, and they ensure that an adversary would have to simultaneously destroy protected silos, completely hidden submarines, and airborne planes, which is a virtually impossible task.
Let's actually zoom in on that submarine leg for a second, because defense analysts generally regard it as the single most survivable component of the whole system. Now, to keep these silent guardians constantly at sea without completely burning out the personnel, the Navy uses a really strict two-crew system. It's pretty fascinating. While the blue crew is out on patrol somewhere in the ocean, the gold crew is onshore, resting, doing training, and preparing for the next rotation. This level of extreme discipline ensures that there is always a secure, hidden second strike capability lurking beneath the waves, just ready to respond if the nation is ever attacked.
Now, while the ultimate goal of the triad is deterrence, meaning not fighting, the U.S. also maintains a layered defensive shield to intercept limited ballistic missile threats if deterrence fails. If a missile actually is launched, its flight happens in three very distinct phases. First is the boost phase, where those massive rocket engines fire and generate a ton of heat. Second is the mid-course phase. This is the longest portion, where the missile is actually traveling on a ballistic path through the vacuum of space. And finally, the terminal phase, where the re-entry vehicle drops back down through the atmosphere rapidly toward its target. U.S. missile defense systems are explicitly designed to detect, track, and attempt to intercept threats during these specific phases. It adds an active layer of protection right on top of the broader deterrence strategy.
Section 3, the nervous system, early warning and NC3. Because at the end of the day, all this muscle is completely useless without a brain to direct it. So let's shift our focus from the physical hardware to the invisible digital networks.
Here's the scary part. National leaders have almost zero time to react to a ballistic missile launch. I mean, we're talking minutes. Because of that, early warning relies on incredibly intense layers of verification. Space-based infrared satellites are up there to immediately detect the intense heat signature of a rocket engine the second it fires. Then you have powerful ground-based long-range radars that track the physical flight path of the object. All of this technical data is constantly being cross-checked with real-time intelligence reporting by highly trained analysts sitting in secure command centers 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The rule here is that accuracy is absolutely always prioritized over just raw speed. They have to make 100% sure a false alarm never triggers a global catastrophe. Now, making sense of that mountain of data requires a highly organized bureaucratic brain, and that responsibility primarily falls to two massive coordinating commands. On one side of the coin, we have USSTRATCOM. They manage the big, broad picture of strategic deterrence and global strike planning. They're constantly evaluating global developments and directing the nation's strategic forces. On the other side is NORAD, which is a really unique binational command operated jointly by the U.S. and Canada. NORAD specializes specifically in continuous aerospace and maritime warning just for North America. By working together, they ensure that civilian and military leadership always have a perfectly clear, real-time picture of the global strategic environment.
Now, what's really interesting about how they connect the muscle and the brain is this quote right here. Redundancy became a central principle. The Nuclear Command, Control, and Communications Network, often just called NC3, is built entirely on backup pathways. It is layers upon layers of backups. If one communication satellite suddenly goes dark, fiber optic networks instantly take over. If ground facilities are somehow compromised, airborne communication platforms step right in to fill the gap. The whole entire architecture is designed so that literally no single failure, whether it's a natural disaster, a technical glitch, or a massive cyber incident, can ever paralyze the shield. It guarantees that lawful orders can always without fail be authenticated and transmitted.
Which takes us to Section 4, the future, modernization and emerging threats.
Because as you know, the world isn't standing still, and the technological landscape that was built during the Cold War is shifting incredibly fast.
Check out this number, 5, or more specifically, Mach 5. This is the staggering minimum speed of emerging hypersonic weapons. That means they are traveling at more than 5 times the speed of sound. Just let that sink in. Furthermore, unlike traditional ballistic missiles that kind of just follow a very predictable math-based arc through space, hypersonic systems can actually maneuver during their flight. This maneuverability, combined with that mind-blowing speed, drastically reduces the critical decision-making time for national leaders. It places an absolutely enormous demand on our radar and early warning satellites. So, to actually meet these 21st century challenges, there is a massive modernization effort currently underway. The U.S. isn't necessarily increasing the sheer number of weapons it has, but rather it's replacing all that aging Cold War architecture. We're talking about upgrading those underground silos, designing even stealthier next-generation submarines, massively fortifying cybersecurity networks, and of course, integrating artificial intelligence. AI is becoming crucial to process massive amounts of incoming sensor data basically instantly. Now, AI isn't going to replace human command. There's always going to be a human in the loop, but it's becoming an absolutely essential tool to make sense of a battlefield that is getting faster and way more complex every single day.
And that brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. For over 7 decades now, this incredibly complex, integrated system of muscle and nerves has actually achieved its primary goal. It has successfully prevented a nuclear war. But as military technology rapidly evolves away from static underground silos and moves toward highly maneuverable hypersonics and AI-driven data analysis, we really have to ask ourselves, will the paradox of deterrence hold up for another 70 years? It is an incredibly delicate balance of engineering, human discipline, and fragile international stability. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it gives you a clear understanding of the massive, silent shield that's operating around us every single day. Keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.